Okay, we're back. Sorry about that. Technical difficulties, episode 7 or episode whatever the episode is. It's the first technical hiccup, but we hopefully you can all see our ugly mugs now rather than just hearing us. So before I rudely interrupted Colin, Colin, if you want to just carry on with basically just telling everybody what it is that you do at Swinton. Obviously, you mentioned that you basically manage the YouTube page and the live videos, I guess, and the content for that.
Yeah, so we do interviews, post-match, pre-match, other interviews with coaches. We've had one with the fitness, strength and conditioning guy that's had a lot of views. We're trying out live commentary of away games. We tried it at Salford. The internet only dropped out once or twice, so that worked quite well. We've signed an Australian lad this year, so we've got a bit of a following in Australia now from him. So anything that we can do that can help the people from his old club to follow us is always welcome. And yeah, we're just trying to publicise the club as much as we can.
Perfect. I mean, what we've got is we've got some questions from the other feed that we have, which I've pulled up on the iPad here, which I'll throw at you two guys over the course of this programme. I guess what we're keen to find out, Colin, is what a question that we asked the guys from London Scholars. Mark and myself, our knowledge of the Swinton side is probably restricted to the former Wigan players very much, and Swinton have just announced that squad that will be taking on Wigan on Sunday. Can you maybe just run us through some of the new guys, the Australian guy that you mentioned, maybe some people for us to look out for on Sunday?
So it's well known that we had our problems at the back end of last season, so we've had a lot of changes to the squad, a lot of new faces. New half-back partnership is going to be something that's potentially an issue, potentially a fresh start for us. So if I look through the squad now, there's not that many that we had last year. You'll know a lot of the ex-Wigan guys anyway. But the Australian player that we've talked about is a guy called Hayden Hanson. He signed from Redcliffe Dolphins, which I think is a second tier or third tier side in Australia. And he's come over really to try and make a career and get into Super League. So from our point of view, if we get 1 or 2 years out of him and he goes on to bigger things, then that's great for everyone. He plays at hooker. We can play at 13 as well. It looks as though he's quick around the ruck area. He only came over after Christmas, so he's probably slightly behind with his fitness in pre-season. He was doing some training on his own, but it's not the same as training with the team. But he scored in his debut against Salford, and he looks pretty handy. So we've got high hopes for him. We have got Luke Waterworth as our other hooker, who you'll know from Wigan. So I think probably hooker's probably going to be our strongest place this year. We've got 2 really good players in there that can run and be quick around the ruck area, which is probably something that we lacked last year. In terms of halfbacks, we've got Danny Ansell, who's a Welsh international, been playing at Hunslet. He's one of them. Jack Hansen is our other halfback that probably will be expected to start, the 2 of them. He's a Welsh international as well, I think. He came from Crusaders. He played for us a little bit at the back end of last season. We didn't really get into the team, but it looks as though he's going to be a first choice this time round. Our outside backs is probably where we are looking good. Of course, Stuart Littler, our coach, was a centre himself in his playing days, and we've got 2 really strong centres. Chris Hankinson signed last season from Barrow, and he really improved as the season went on. He was maybe a bit shaky at the start, but towards the back end of the season, in them the crucial 8 games that saw us stay up, he was one of the standout players. And on the other side is probably the signing that I'm most excited about, George Tyson. He's played at Sheffield and Oldham. He's very committed. He's one of them players that you hate him when he plays against you. He got booed at Swinton every time. He's always caused us problems. He gets in fights. He gets into silly stuff.
With a name like Tyson, you'd expect that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, of course. But he'll be loved because he's a committed player. He's a very aggressive, 100% player. He can play in centre or in the middle. Oldham used him in the middle a bit, but I think he prefers it in the centre where he's got a bit more room because he's got good pace. And I think he's going to be a real threat for us this year, probably the standout signing. He's certainly a player who, if he focuses, he could play at Super League level. Like I think he's always impressed me before, so he's probably the standout signing for me that we've got. Other guys, a guy from Wigan, Kyle Shelford, that you'll probably know. Very professional. All the lads that we ever get from Wigan, they come with a great attitude, great professionalism, and they're just raising the bar, they're raising the standard of everyone. They come in with this attitude that they've had from probably being kids at Wigan and they bring that over, and it's something that really adds to the club, not just in what they can do on the field, but in the overall package for them.
Mark, were you asking something when Colin? Was there a player that you just mentioned, Mark?
I remember Nicholson played at hooker last year, didn't he, as well? So that's another player who can play in that position.
He's left the club now.
He's on the list.
Yeah, we've got his brother. His brother came in at the back end of last season.
There you go.
And when we were really scrambling around for players, we didn't have a full squad or anything, and it was a case of pretty much bring your boots and you'll get a game. So he brought his brother along, and he did quite well for us. He came from the amateur game. He's certainly a prospect. But yeah, Anthony Nicholson, who was our hooker, has left the club. I think he's retired from the game. He had a lot of injuries.
We've got a few questions. Like I said on the other feed, I think we've got 2 questions there, and Matt's just asked a question, which I'll put to you in just a second, Colin, about the dual registration system, which was obviously formally re-announced, I guess, this week from the Wigan perspective. Mark, I'm going to throw over to you for the Wigan squad. Obviously, it's a very youthful looking Wigan side that they've announced for this game. Off air, you said it's pretty much, I guess it's a trial for some of the guys. What do you make of that squad, and what are you hoping to see?
Well, it's an audition, isn't it, for who's going to get on dual reg deals at Swinton, I suppose. There's a couple of lads who I've not seen much of at all on that list, like James Barron, Morgan Smithies. There, I think they're first years at I think second. Maybe I don't know much about them.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they go.
To get in. They've obviously impressed Matty Pete to get in, because I guess, this is what we said about the Scholars game. These are young lads playing against big men, and that's one of the biggest tests for them. But we'll just run through the Wigan squad. We've got Barnes, Barron, Brown, Davis, Field, Forsyth, Ganson, Heckford, Higginson, Kabula, Mullen, Navarrete, Paisley, Partington, Jake Shorrocks and Joe Shorrocks, who aren't related, Smithies, Woods and Worthington. Anybody that you're particularly excited about seeing in that squad, Mark?
Well, Shorrocks and Woods, Jake Shorrocks and Woods, I assume, will start the game as the halfback partnership. Woods was really good against the Scholars, I thought, and it was great to see Shorrocks back on a rugby pitch after watching him go off last year in that game at Widnes, and the knee problems he's had. It's great to see him back, and he scored that try last week. Liam Forsyth played for a bit of games at Swinton last year. I went to the first game of the season last year when he scored, I think, 2 tries and stopped Adrian Purtell scoring a try as well, which was no mean feat because he's a big bloke. And I thought good things from him. So it'll be interesting to see if he'll be stepping up a bit now that he's got a bit of first team experience. And I really like Joe Brown. Every time I see him play, I just think he's just budgy too, isn't he, to me? And then Sammy Kabula's the player that's probably the player that's most excited me watching the 19 for the last year and a half. So a bloke I know who goes watching the Scholars sent me a text last week after the game saying how I should be excited about him coming through the ranks, and I told him I already was. So they're kind of maybe the players that I'm looking forward to seeing the most. I thought Liam Paisley was great last week too.
I think that's the thing with this with this Wigan side is they are obviously, it's a very young squad, and it is in effect, I guess, the reserve side. We'll see a lot of these players play in those reserve games, the very few reserve games that we have this season, and I guess this is the opportunity. These guys have probably maybe just missed out on the plane over to Australia for that squad. So this is now their chance, I guess, to sort of show everybody when the team gets back from Australia, if we pick up any injuries, why they should be in there. From the Wigan point of view, I think we know the first team players that have got experience in there. I think one of the players, I think he probably played for Swinton actually when you beat Huddersfield was Kane Barnes, the prop. Did you see much of him last year?
Didn't he get sin-binned?
I think he might have done. Did you see much of him, Colin, last year?
Yeah, he played probably maybe 10 games at most. He played a good few games. Barnes, Paisley, Woods played. I tell you, Woods, he is a star of the future. He was outstanding for us. He made his debut for us against Huddersfield in that game, and he was probably 18, 19. And I've never seen a player with so much confidence. From the first minute, he was ordering players around the field and directing things. And in terms of dual registration, he's one that I'd be really hoping that we can see a bit of this more this year at Swinton, because I think he's a massive prospect.
Yeah, I mean,
I came to the game when you had all the luncheon and all that to try and raise the money. Last year, I think early in the Super 8s, and he played in that game, and he really impressed me in that game that I came down to watch. I went Swinton 3 times last year, and the bar was in a different place every time.
It's changed again. We've got a new one.
I mean, that's one of the reasons, I guess, we'll probably sort of skip ahead to that point, of not necessarily just about the bar, but one of the reasons why I was really keen to get somebody from Swinton, and we're lucky enough to get Colin tonight, to try and promote this game, because I think Harewood Road is obviously Sale Rugby Union's former ground. It's a tiny ground. It's unique. But I went to the Challenge Cup game last year, and I think it's one of the only stadiums where you get that. There's a clubhouse still, and it's got very much that old clubhouse feel of, you feel like you're going watching St. Pat's or St. Jude's, but you're watching a Wigan side. And I'm going to pop this on the screen now, because I'd be interested to get your thoughts on this, Mark, as well. Is, it's £10 for adults on Sunday. Yes, it's a Wigan reserve team that's going out there, but these are the stars of the future. Like you said, Josh Woods in particular is probably worth paying £10 just to say that you watched him before he sort of made it big. And it's free for under 16s on Sunday as well. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity, to take people, introduce people to rugby league and support Swinton. Obviously, we'll touch on maybe a few of the problems that Swinton did have last year, and managed to survive. Compared, Mark, to last week, £20 at Lee, £10 on Sunday. I mean, that's great, isn't it?
It's really great, and I'd recommend people go, because it's not a hard ground to get to once you get round the M60. It's quite straightforward to get down to the stadium from there. And I went 3 times last season, and I really enjoyed it. I went to Swinton, London at the start of the season. I went to the Cup game. And then I think they must have been playing Oldham or Rochdale, one of the rivals for relegation. Yeah. The game I went to in the 8s, and every time I found the atmosphere really nice at the ground. Like I said, it's easy to get to. The Swinton fans are great. I've always had a soft spot for Swinton fans for years. They don't like Wigan as much because we're the big boys. We're not Salford, so it's all right. We're not the worst because we're not Salford. But I used to go and watch Blackpool Panthers back in the day, nearly 10 years ago now, and every time Swinton came to Fylde for those games, they were always my favourite group of fans. And now when you go, you still see the same sort of faces, and they're all nice people. I remember at the Coventry doubleheader in the Four Nations a couple of years ago, I sat up until about 2:00 in the hotel bar getting drunk with some Swinton fans as well, and they were talking loads about Liam Marshall because he'd just scored a few amazing tries for you guys in the close end of that season, and then we signed him back on a proper deal for the next year, hadn't we? And then we all know what's happened since then. He scored the best try of the season last year against Saints on Good Friday, and second top try scorer in Super League. So yeah, I'd recommend people go down and speak to the Swinton fans. They're a really nice bunch, and get involved and enjoy the atmosphere. And that, for the price wise, that's a bargain.
Yeah, absolutely. Colin,
it's just my car won't get me there this weekend.
Colin,
it's not far from the tram stop. The tram stop's about a 2-minute walk away.
There you go. No excuse.
Yeah, but
so it's not an excuse.
Right. Well, I need to get a bus replacement train, then a train to Manchester, then a tram out. If it was reasonable, I'd do it.
Colin, how important is this game for Swinton? Obviously, it's an opportunity, like we said, to look at players that will likely be joining Swinton on dual reg. But I guess financially, it can't be that big of an earner. It's a pre-season; you're only charging £10. But what are you hoping as a club to? What do you get from this friendly against the club, the brand that is Wigan?
Well, I think there's two things that we get. First of all, it's £10 and free for kids. So that's opening it up to people who've never been to a game before, maybe people in Sale that haven't tried rugby league before, that didn't get down to a game last season. What can you get for £10 these days? Not a lot. So it's enticing people in on that point. You mentioned the stars of the future from Wigan, and it wouldn't surprise me if 2-3 of them gone and played international rugby league, because that's the pedigree that you get at Wigan and the standard of players that you get. There's the other thing that you've mentioned there of potentially people that are going to come and play at Swinton. we're going to be playing against them for this game, and we'd be hoping that several of them can perform well for us again this year. They really helped us out last year. But the other thing is our first team. We've had 2 friendlies so far. The first was against Salford, where we finished with 14 players. They had 13 substitutes, and they were able to just constantly change it. So the last 20 minutes of the game, they were all fresh, and we were on our backsides, really, and they ran in a load of points. So it wasn't really a fair matchup. The game last week at Whitehaven, they only named 2 substitutes, so they were struggling at the back end of the game, and the conditions were atrocious. It was probably touch and go whether it got played, to be honest. So that wasn't a great warm-up for us either going into the league season. So this really is it. This is it'll be a strong test. It'll be a good Wigan team. Last year in pre-season we played Wigan, but it was more of a 19s team. It was a kids team, and it really showed. It was men against boys. But this, I think, will be a really good, fairly even match, I would say. Because yes, the young players from Wigan, but the standard's high. And the players a team every week. They're probably a bit more settled than what we are with so many new faces in. So I think it'll be a really good test before we go to Toulouse for the first league game.
Yeah, obviously a very tough start to the season. Sorry, go on, Matt.
You talked about future internationals. You've got 2 players playing in this game who played for France in the World Cup. You've got Nabil Jalou for you, Navra for us. Excuse my pronunciation on Jalou. But yeah, two World Cup players already in the game. There you go.
Yeah, well, there's another 2. We've got Roger Lloyd and Danny Ansell who played for Wales as well. So it's 4 World Cup players there.
Yeah, you've got probably.
There you go. Everyone get down, watch the World Cup stars.
Absolutely.
International Rugby League at Sale. There you go.
Perfect. One of the questions that's on the feed from the last video that we got kicked off. Who do we think Wigan, and I'll direct this question at Mark first of all, who do you think Wigan will send on loan, on dual reg to Swinton? Who would you like to see getting more first team rugby at what is going to be an incredibly competitive championship this year with obviously Lee dropping down, Toronto coming up, which we've spoken about previously. It's probably the hardest championship for a long time. Who would you like to see from maybe that squad that we're going to announce playing for Swinton on a regular basis?
I'd certainly go along with the Josh Woods conversation from before. He's a player who he impressed me when I saw him play last year in that under-19s final against Cass. He was absolutely the best player on the pitch, notably, and set a lot of things going. I'm just getting the squad back up on my screen.
So
I'd like to see Macaulay Davies and Jack Higginson, because I think they're at the stage now where basically they need to be putting their hands up for first team rugby league. So they need to be stepping up to the championship level now, because I think did they both have a bit of a go in League One last year at Workington. So I think
Jack Higginson obviously went to the World Cup as well, didn't he?
Yeah. So they need to be showing that they can be first teamers now for really their long-term Wigan future. So I'm looking more at the people that I know aren't going to be in the 19s necessarily this season for Wigan. The players who need to stake a claim for a long-term contract. So those 2 are ones I'm really interested in. And James Worthington obviously got 1 game, scored 2 tries against Wakefield last year. So he's one that you want to kick on this year, especially because we don't have a ton of depth at centre position. So Forsyth and him are 2 centres that are going to be our depth in that position this year, really.
Yeah, I think I was at the launch last night for Wigan, and what was really interesting is James Worthington's name came up from Dan Sargison, actually, and Dan Sargison said that he's got to make sure that he's on the top of his game, because James Worthington's not a million miles away from that first team, and if Sargison doesn't get his act together, Worthington's going to be challenging him for that spot. Colin, if we were to
the defence from Worthington against the Scholars, a lower level opposition, was a lot better than Sargenson's defence against Lee, possibly.
I think Dan Sargison will be the first person to admit that as well. I think he was the first person to admit that is
rusty. Let's say.
Yeah, we'll blame it on jet lag. Colin, if I was to give you that squad, that Wigan squad, and we say that Woods, we'll give you Woods. He's going to Swinton. We'll give you Woods. Who else do you want off that list? Who would really? You said you've got a new halfback combination. You've got strength and depth in hooker. I'm not giving you Josh Ganson. You're not having him because he's my favourite. So you can't have him. Who would you want from that list to really strengthen your side in the Championship?
I think where we need depth and where it really helped us last year was Paisley and Barnes. Some size in the middle, and that's really getting big players in the Championship isn't easy when you're on a tight budget, because the bigger the player, the more money they command. And them two really impressed me, and that's where we need. I think just in terms of, I know you were saying who would you give to Swinton. I think we should make it clear that it's the relationship is about us wanting them. I don't think we're having players put up on us. When we had the relationship before with Warrington a few years ago, they were just sending players to us and sort of dictating who we had in our team, and that was often players coming back from injury who didn't want to play for us. They weren't bothered, and it really didn't work for us at the time, other than getting a full squad to put out a team. But I think the relationship with Wigan's worked really well for both parties, because it's helped us out when we've needed players, but we've not been forced in who we're going to pick and who we're going to play, which would upset our squad that we've got anyway. And it's obviously helped Wigan because we've seen the likes of Liam Marshall. I think his was more of a loan arrangement because we had him for pretty much the full season. But he really developed as the season went on. There's only so much they can do with the few reserve games they get and playing at under-19s. But when you're coming in and you're playing men in the Championship, it really helped him. So we've seen from both sides how it really benefits, and it's a really good relationship that the two clubs have got.
I've put Matt McCauley. Anybody that watches this show knows who Matt is, and I'm sure we'll see him on here very shortly over the next week or so. But I don't know if you can see that question or not, Colin, on your screen. So I mean, we're putting this. We put this into a podcast now as well for people that prefer to listen to us. So I will read the question out. I'd love to know whether the dual registration system works from a Swinton point of view. The issues with reserves in Super League are well documented. What's the view from the Championship? I think you've probably touched on that now, but it's obviously a benefit. We can see the benefit to Wigan. We're giving games to guys that just are now too old for the under-19s, and they don't have regular rugby to play. What is it from a club's point of view? That issue that you talked about with Warrington, you could almost be used as a training ground, really competitive training ground for some clubs.
Yeah, we were. I mean, we had the likes of Morley came down and did a game, and Lee Brace did a game, and I mean they were all right, and they were a big name, and it's nice to see an international star like that. But some of them, they just didn't care, and they weren't putting it in. And some players who have gone on and had reasonable careers in Super League, the attitude they showed at Swinton, I never would have guessed that they could have a career because they didn't show it. But from Wigan, every single one of the lads that have come from Wigan, they come with a first-class attitude. They want to learn, and they know, because they've seen it, that if they play well at Swinton, then they put themselves in the picture to get a game for Wigan. Everyone that I speak to agrees, and I don't think there's anyone in rugby league that doesn't agree that a strong reserve competition would be great to have, but there's not that many games. They get called off because teams can't put out a full side, and there's only so much players can get from the 19s playing against kids. That there's more from the Championship. I spoke to Kyle Shelford the other day, and he said ideally a strong reserves would be best for him, but in the absence of that, Championship is the best you're going to get, because otherwise what happens, they get above the 19s and they're out of the game. They're either out of the game or they have to get a job, and then a lot of them are lost to the game. There is a massive drop off in players who've got through the youth stage. They've not developed. Not every player's ready at 20 to play in Super League, and so many leave the game, and that's dual registration can help in that, in supporting the reserve system and keeping players in the sport.
Yeah, I think that's you've hit the nail on the head there. I guess that is the benefit of this dual reg. Works well for both parties, and ensures that we're keeping a good talent pool spread across the three main competitions that we have in England. Matt, what's your take on the sort of reserve debacle? But we've obviously picked up Swinton again this year as our partners in dual reg. What's your take on the whole dual reg situation at the moment?
I quite like dual registration. I think it's a sort of way to keep a loan system active, but keep it a bit more flexible. So I do quite like that, because loans have to be like a mandatory month-long period, but it's such a physical game, and with the salary cap and with the amount of money in the game, clubs can't have huge squads, so this keeps it a bit more flexible. But I do think having a strong reserve competition would be definitely where we would want to aim for as a sport, because it means that you've got more people participating at that level. You've got a bigger talent pool to draw from.
Yeah.
But I think if I was designing the system, I'd have a reserve system that alternates with a 19s game. So you'd have 1 week having a 19s, 1 week having a reserves, and you'd have your top end 19s players playing in your reserve side the next week. So that's how I'd look at it, rather than having a week having 19s and under 23s or reserves every week. I think that's maybe not feasible. But to fill in those gaps for those players, the dual reg system works really well, and it helps out the championship clubs, I think. I mean, I went to watch Swinton twice last year and gave them some money out of my pocket and stuff, and I wouldn't have done that if they didn't have the Wigan players on the. And I'm not being,
No, that's a good
cruising
point.
it's true. So you get that bit of interest both ways, and as long as the clubs use the relationship in the right way, I think it's a real positive thing for the sport. It helps build the community. I'm all about fans getting on with other fans rather than falling out between clubs.
Yeah.
So I love, speaking to fans of other clubs and getting their perspective, and making it more of a community sport, as everyone reading from the same page.
I think that's
I'm too idealistic.
You need to be in rugby league, otherwise nothing else. I think that's a really good point, Mark, that you make. Is there is that attraction with dual regs? It makes you all of a sudden you're looking out for Swinton's results, and like you said, you went to watch Swinton because of that connection with Wigan, and it's almost it's not going to put hundreds of people through the gate at Swinton because of that, but it is going to create an interest. You're going to look out for Swinton's results, and that can only be a benefit. And obviously, it pretty much starts every season with this kind of game. I mean, Andy's just put this point on here, which, like Hull Academy, would it be an idea to combine with a local side, set up reserves, i.e. Wigan, Swinton?
There's talk of Bradford and Toronto doing that, isn't there?
Yeah,
they've linked up for dual reg.
Yeah.
So that's another official, isn't it? Example.
I think that's a really good point, Andy. I think Wigan.
Yeah.
For Wigan, probably not, because I think the youth system at Wigan is so strong that they probably wouldn't want to not dilute it, but I think they quite like the culture at the Wigan club that is created all the way from the 16s all the way through to the first team, and I think that's an element of culture. But that's certainly a good discussion point that we might pick up on another time if relations perhaps between Salford and Swinton were a bit better, then you could see that, because Salford's don't have a youth system as such anymore. It's obviously no reserve grade rugby, and there's obviously a lot of people in the Manchester area that will play rugby league that just probably don't have those options.
Just on that point, can I just interrupt? We have launched a Category 3 academy this year. Called the Rugby College. So we are starting our player pathway. We sort of started from scratch after everything that happened last year.
Yeah.
But we are starting to develop a pathway for players, and hopefully in 2 or 3 years we will start to see our own players coming through. So we are making progress on that.
Yeah, and that's absolutely fantastic to hear. For all rugby fans, really, to know that a team like Swinton that had so many well documented problems financially last year managed to stay in the championship, and you're actually investing money in what's going to reap rewards in the next few years. We'll
helps
finish.
Swinton reconnect. It helps Swinton reconnect back with the Swinton community as well, because having the ground out in Sale, I know a few people don't necessarily like that, but getting the club better known again back in Swinton. Plus, Salford aren't competing for these youngsters, so you've kind of got the whole market to yourself to go and get these youngsters that aren't getting picked up by Wigan or Saints or Lee a bit further down the road.
Yeah,
I think that's great for Swinton. I didn't know that was happening. Well done.
Yeah, I think that's a credit to the Swinton club, and probably underlines why Wigan and Swinton have this arrangement, because they're obviously a forward-thinking club like Wigan. We'll finish off tonight, Colin, getting your thoughts on what will be a good 2018 for Swinton. Obviously, you survived the championship last year. The off-field problems appear to be sorted. Looks like you've got a good roster of players, albeit a lot of them unknown. We've talked about how tough the championship is this year. adding in Lee and Toronto into that side. You've obviously got the trip to Toronto in May, which you can look forward to. What does a good season look like for Swinton in 2018?
In terms of on the pitch, I know the club hasn't put a target on where we're going to finish or put a number on a position. From purely from my point of view, if someone said you're going to finish third bottom, I'd snatch their hand off right now. That's the aim, to stay in the Championship and consolidate. We're starting from scratch really with building the club back up, and we're putting in so much work off the field to try and build it. But that is sort of not, I wouldn't use the word jeopardy, but if you get relegated, you take a big hit financially, and it makes things twice as hard. So staying in the Championship is the aim on the field. We've got a small squad, which will thankfully be bolstered by the Wigan lads that'll come across. But I think if most Swinton fans were honest and someone offered them third bottom, they would take it right now. In terms of the style of rugby, we've played a quite popular style of rugby over the last few years under John Duffy, to the point where other fans from higher up the Championship have come and said, we'd rather watch your team because you play the ball around and throw it wide and everything. So hopefully we'll see a continuation of that with having a centre as the coach now. We've strengthened in the centres. Getting the ball out there is going to be the challenge, I think, because we're probably not as strong as some other teams up the middle, and the halfbacks, as I've said, are a bit of an unknown quantity. So getting the ball out to them will be the key on that front. Off the field, it's just trying to keep building the club. Like I said, we've got the Category 3 Academy awarded by the RFL this year. We're trying to build attendances. Our whole media output has increased. We're working really hard on that. And when I look at what other clubs in the Championship are doing, I'd say we're probably top 5 now in terms of the media output and engagement. So that's something we're going to keep building on, and hopefully it'll be reflected in attendances, and we can push towards, getting bigger attendances, which obviously every extra person through the gate means money available to strengthen the squad at the back end of the season.
Perfect.
I don't want to be bringing you down on your third bottom thing, but we've been running some predictions for my podcast Super League Pod. And one of the questions we ask is, who do you think is going to get relegated to League One? And 55% of the people who voted have picked Swinton as one of the 2 teams to go down, unfortunately. But I don't believe that for a second. I think you'll be safe.
Well, Gary Schofield has us bottom. Betfred has us bottom. We've been written off by people, but we've had that the last 2 years, and we've stayed up, and we've done well. So, we'll fight for it. It's going to be tough. It'll be a long season with a small squad, but I believe in the people that we've got in the club at the moment, so we've just got to hope there's 2 teams that aren't as good as us. We'll work harder. There'll be more than 2 teams that we work harder than.
Yeah, Martin's just put on there all the best to Swinton for the upcoming season. Hope you get the results you needed to stay in the Championship. And do you know what? That's exactly my sentiment as well. I think what comes across really well, Colin, is the fact that you've come on here on a Wigan platform to discuss and promote the game on Sunday, but I think anybody that watches this over the next few days can see the passion that you've got for the club that you clearly love, and that certainly shines through. And we wish you and the club all the best for next year. And we want a dual reg team in the Championship, not League One. And if we can continue the relationship between Wigan and Swinton for the coming years, it's obviously not done Liam Marshall any harm. Been people like that as an example. So,
Tom Davies, Liam Forsyth, they started the year last year, and look how they kicked on when they got in the first team.
Yeah, so I think, there's a massive benefit, but I think there's a lot of clubs that we would probably maybe invite on here at some point and probably not have the same warm feeling that we probably get from what we get from Swinton. And I think it's a credit to the club, the fact that you've had so many problems, but you're actually still spending money in the areas, like you said, media, the academy, things that will grow the club over the next few years. So I think that's that they are our sentiments towards Swinton. And we'll finish off, Mark, by allowing you 30 seconds to tell us when we can listen to you've got first show of the season coming up on Super League Pod.
Yeah, we have a show we'll be recording on Monday night, and it's a season prediction show. We'll be covering every team, all the fans' views that we've had in, pick off what people think is going to happen to the main awards. Spoiler alert: Saints seem quite popular this year, and then so that'll be available to download off iTunes or Spreaker. Just go to @SuperLeaguePod on Twitter. You'll get that probably very late on Monday or very early on Tuesday. Will be where to find that. So if everyone wants to listen, that'd be great.
And how long are your predictions open for people to can they still fill out the form online to get the predictions?
That's a good point. Yeah, it's still pinned to the top of our Twitter page, and it'll be open until Sunday morning. I'll shut it down on Sunday and then finalise our show rundown.
So for anybody that doesn't know, it's a bit of fun. You basically predict everything that's going to happen in the 2018 season, as well as, I can't remember the way that you describe it, Mark, but basically an out there moment.
Yeah, basically, so we ask people, all the main awards, or trophies, awards, that sort of thing, and then ask how people think their team's going to do, and then we ask for a prediction that lands somewhere between something that's improbable but still possible. So, not like we're going to have a whole round of Super League played on the moon. That's impossible. But but something like I don't know. We've had quite a few about people changing genders this year predictions, so we'll see how they go.
Well, yeah, okay. We'll probably, and on that bombshell. So I'll finish off by giving the game on Sunday one last plug. I think it's a fantastic initiative that the Lions have promoted. £10 for adults, free for under 16s. Turn up at Haywood Road on Sunday, pay on the gate, and get your Super League fix before the season starts proper next week. So I'll leave it to say, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time out of your Friday night to join me. And Colin, thank you so much for, again, taking the time out of your Friday night to sort of talk so passionately about Swinton, and we wish you the best of luck for 2018.
Thanks for having me. Best of luck to Wigan as well.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Cheers.